Great. Thank you all so very much. I've really enjoyed the chance to hear everything from music education, art appreciation, depression awareness, and reading skills and pattern recognition. And what we're really talking about here is work that is very serious, but also has real learning components. And so one question, and we can actually just go down the line, that I would love to hear from all of you is, how did you, what's the spirit of the work that you brought? Knowing that you were trying to get to something that felt really joyful and empathy building, but that the work actually is quite detailed, and you all chose very challenging fields to work within. And so maybe we'll kick off with Sara talking about play art.
Can I go second?
Okay. Ritwik, tell us how that worked with Signal Flow.
Sure. I was a music journalist, but I had no idea how music was made, and I had never made music myself. And I would have all these musician friends who would have so much fun just jamming out, but there seemed to be a real barrier to get to that point where you actually could do that. And I really wanted to reduce that barrier because I thought that that experience should be for everyone. It shouldn't be for a select few who sort of the world says can perform music.
Great. So almost a spirit of exploration and inquisitiveness. What about you, Julian?
Well, for me, I think it was a lot of inspiration from being a gamer and really realizing that games can be a lot more than fun and can actually be really powerful experiences in getting you to be in the shoes of someone else. I was particularly impressed by a game called Ether One that has an amazing narrative about trying to save the mind of someone with dementia. And I think to me that was the starting point to start considering, well, how can I bring something like this into depression? So,
one of the things I like that you mentioned was the idea that games become a really fertile ground to be able to ask for help and express the things that you don't know.
Yeah. I mean, and I think like that's why I brought up World of Warcraft and that's why online multiplayer games are so big. There is something powerful about them that brings people together. And during my research, I found out a lot about people that actually build relationships. They might not necessarily see or be physically in the same place, but they come together, and I think that's one of those really powerful elements about video games.
Thank you. Paola, how about for you? And also hat tip for the David Bowie reference, much appreciated.
Yeah, it was the Julian ideas. I think that I remember that when I started prototyping Major Tom in the beginning, I show Julian's my drafts, and he said, "Oh, this story is about Major Tom." And then everybody in the class was like, "Oh, Major Tom is so cool name, just use it." For me, I think that working with the kids at the school was like the most important moment in my thesis. So when I started working on thesis, my idea was to help them to learn to read. But then in the school, I just realized that this is a natural process, like for them, they can learn so quickly. But there were other kids that were having trouble to reading. They were not engaged into reading activities. So just at that moment was like, okay, this is where I can help. As a designer, I can do something for them.
Great.
And for me, I have background in fine art, and I have worked in art museums before. So when I came to the program, I didn't know what to do. But while I was thinking about thesis, I was like, how should I do something about what I really enjoy? But when I was thinking about all things I like, I realized it's been a recent thing that I started going to museums and really love and appreciate how much value there is. And how I got there was how much I know about things. And if I didn't have any art education, or I didn't understand any of English or any like main languages they spoke, I realized all those could be missed, and that's actually missing from a lot of people. And the art museums have been become a place for fun or for young people, but the learning part is still somewhat missing for me. So that's how I came to this project.
And interesting, like how do you surface things that might otherwise not be expressed as far as art history knowledge? One thing that I'm curious about with this group in particular is how you find a visual language that helps connote the playfulness you're going for, but also really conveys professionalism. And Ritwik, maybe we'll start with you on that.
So historically, a lot of music making equipment has not been super playful. The one synthesizer that really inspired me on this project was Teenage Engineering's OP1. And one of the design decisions that they made was to make it look like a toy. And on the surface, it seems like a really stupid thing to do. Why would you want to make something as serious as a synthesizer look like a toy? Because they had all these funny graphics of boxers and tape machines and all these really colorful, bright, colorful displays and so on. But at the same time, the machine was really powerful, and the playfulness of it kind of made it a little approachable and helped people take this preconceived notion of synths being really complicated away. And that really inspired me to find a visual language that communicates well, but at the same time doesn't look super janky.
Super janky, big no-no.
Well, I think for me, well, first of all, I'm a huge comic book fan, and if we actually look at like current video games, like the art value and the production value is usually really open. Like there's a lot of room there to explore. And for me to get where I got, I had to come up with a story first, and then use that story to kind of craft and define all of the things that made Soa what it ended up being. And the story was an astronaut exploring a giant, floating through space, and that was really the route that informed the rest of the design, and trying to create wearables. And as for creating the language, well, like I said, I noticed that there's a lot of room to create freely certain visual languages, and I'm digressing. I think like it was really coming up with the story first and having like a compelling story in order to come up with the visuals.
So for me, when I started designing Major Tom, I remember that, so I went to the Brooklyn Free School one time per week, and every Friday, it was every Friday. And the Fridays we went to the playgrounds. But the first 2 hours, we have time to play with the kids. And they were playing with blocks and were playing with Legos. And they love to make spaceships. And they were into Star Wars books and stories. So when I started designing Major Tom, it was like, and it had to be something about, astronauts, spaceships, something like that.
When I was thinking, there's a research, or when you think about our museum, they already have contents there. And what's missing there is how they are communicating to you. And that's where I think the playfulness needs to be the bridge to gap you and the contents. So that's how I came to do some more game. And I probably mentioned during my presentation a couple times, but how they're using their language is currently what I think is a problem. There's a language, the tone, the seriousness, or how the professional terms they use are not really communicating to the people who are novice to the museum experience. And I think the game could be, because game is for anyone, and it doesn't communicate to you, oh, you need to be perfect. So that's how I have come to this playfulness, art, and learning together.
Finding the joy in some of that work. Just quickly, as a last question, you've all described how you had some deep affinity or subject matter expertise in the area you've chosen to pursue. But I'm curious, in conversations with your target audience members, was there any aha moment that either convinced you were on the right path or made you realize you had a lot of work to do. I'm curious if there was like one moment that really crystallized or was a turning point in your project. And maybe Paula, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think that for me the most aha moment was like when, as I told you before, like working with the kids and doing the paper prototypes. Like, how can I teach them? Oh, how can this artifact can help them to learn to read? But then was like, no way. There is some kids that they don't like to read. They are learning to read. They are spending too much time reading. So I think that realizing this issue was like, this was the moment where I decided to move forward with Major Tom and make a digital game to help them.
To me, it was a little bit on the personal level of just trying to explain to other people what I was doing, facing the fact that, okay, I have to open up myself to talk about this, and really find that moment of discomfort. Like, I kind of feel ashamed about, talking or saying that, I'm going through this. And then hearing and finding out the same with those that I had the chance to talk to. But then you cross a certain moment when, like once you get past that threshold, the conversation just starts flowing. And when I spoke with other people that have struggled with similar issues, you start like finding affinity with them and like, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And, like feeling like really heavy or like, like your blankets in the morning feel like lead. Yeah, for me it was that.
For me, it happened when I interviewed one of my role models, Brian Crabtree, who is an instrument maker. He creates an instrument called the monome. And he said that curiosity will teach you synthesis. And when he said that, I realized that what I'm designing for is creating curiosity in people. I'm not necessarily trying to force a curriculum on them. I'm trying to get them to become curious about something so they get inspired to find out more about it. And so I scaled back from designing the whole synthesizer to starting with just the basic components so they get inspired to dig deeper and look further into what they're actually doing.
I think curiosity inspires synthesis is a process note that all the designers in the room can sort of nod actively in agreement with. And Sarah, how about you? Any ahas?
My aha moments came when I was visiting art museums. So most of the field visits gave me a lot of aha moments. But during the winter break, I've been to a couple of Japanese museums, and I see a lot of couples. They're young, like in 20s or 30s, and anything unexpected happening in museums. So when I was there, I saw a lot of 3D glasses, like paper 3D glasses, and people were just freely approaching it and trying them. And that was the aha moment where I thought of people actually likes experiencing things. If there's something we are familiar with using, but at the same time that's not really it's like awkwardly fitting with the museum setting.
Thank you all so much. Excellent work.
Thank you.